America's economy is standing on the edge of a cliff, and when the ground gives way, not every state will make it out alive. 10 states are staring down disaster. States where rainy day funds don't even cover 5% of budgets, where household debt is crushing families at over $40,000, where home values have dropped tens of thousands in months. This isn't theory. Manufacturing, energy, retail, all shrinking right now. Jobs vanishing. Poverty climbing into the double digits. Families watching their homes turn from assets into anchors. This isn't just a dip. This is the fracturing of the American foundation. When recession hits, these states won't just stumble, they could shatter. And it begins now. Number 10. West Virginia. West Virginia might look like a quiet mountain escape, but beneath those rolling hills lies an economy hanging by a thread. The state's rainy day fund covers less than 7% of annual spending, well below what budget experts consider safe. Unemployment runs higher than the national average, and nearly 1 in 5 West Virginians lives below the poverty line, close to double the national rate. The median home price sits under $200,000, but typical wages are far lower, and values in Charleston and the southern coal fields have been sliding. Many homeowners are already underwater, owing more than their homes are worth. Economic growth has lagged behind the rest of the country for years. Coal production has fallen sharply over the past decade, and state revenue tied to coal has dropped with it. Drive through once busy mining towns and you see it. Empty storefronts, for sale signs that never come down, schools merging because there aren't enough kids left. For many families, staying means watching their property values sink. Leaving could mean walking away with nothing. With thin reserves, a weak tax base, and a population already on the brink, West Virginia is a ticking time bomb. Number 9. New Mexico. Don't let the desert sunsets fool you. New Mexico is hiding an economic disaster in slow motion. With just over 2 million people, the state has one of the narrowest economic bases in America. Its fiscal reserves amount to only about 7% of annual expenditures, below what's considered comfortable. Unemployment tends to run above the national average when the economy turns. The energy sector provides nearly 40% of state revenue, making it dangerously exposed to oil and gas price swings. When those revenues shrink, so does funding for schools and infrastructure. The median home price has climbed into the mid-$300,000 range, but household income is far lower than in most states. That gap is pricing out entire families. Nearly half of renters spend more than 30% of income on housing. Average consumer debt is high relative to incomes. New Mexico's poverty rate ranks among the highest in the country at over 18%. Healthcare access ranks 49th nationally. Education funding is perennially strained. Over 900 bridges are structurally deficient. For teachers, nurses, and oil field workers, that means brutal trade-offs. Take on a second job, move farther from work for cheaper rent, or leave the state entirely. In a serious recession, those choices stop being options and start becoming ultimatums. Number 8. Alaska. Alaska, America's last frontier, is becoming one of its most fragile economies. The population has been shrinking in recent years as people leave in search of stability and affordability. In Anchorage, median home prices sit around $400,000, while wages outside oil and government haven't kept up. Groceries cost 30% more than in the lower 48. Gas is expensive. Heating bills eat a painful share of monthly income. Alaska's economy depends heavily on oil and resource extraction. When production or prices fall, the state's finances get hammered. Oil output is far below its peak decades ago, and revenue from oil taxes has been volatile. The state built up savings in the past, but recent drawdowns and lower production have added serious stress. Unemployment often runs above the national average. Many households carry substantial consumer debt. For regular people, that looks like hard choices every month: heat or food, car payment or credit cards, stay in a remote town, or uproot the family to the lower 48. Infrastructure is another crisis. Roads between major population centers are limited. Many rural villages are losing schools and clinics as budgets tighten. In a deep recession, Alaska won't just contract. Entire regions could become unlivable for families without massive outside support. Number 7. Oklahoma. Oklahoma calls itself the heartland, but its economic heart is under real strain. The state is heavily reliant on oil, natural gas, and agriculture, three industries that can get crushed at the same time when prices fall or weather turns. The median home price is relatively affordable, but household incomes are also lower, squeezing families from both ends when costs rise. Oklahoma's Rainy Day Fund covers just over 5% of annual spending. Tax collections tied to energy can drop fast when natural gas or oil prices weaken. Unemployment spikes noticeably when energy and farming slow. The state's GDP can dip into negative territory during downturns. Consumer debt per household runs into the low 40,000s. Healthcare access ranks 48th nationally. Education funding ranks 43rd. Unemployment benefits are modest, barely enough to cover rent. Over 1,200 bridges are structurally deficient. Rural hospitals have been closing or cutting services. For many small towns, one closed plant or a few failed harvests is all it takes to flip from surviving to dying. Oklahoma's economy has always been a bet on cheap energy and stable weather. In the next recession, that bet could fail hard. But if you think these states have it bad, the next 6 are facing something far worse. We're talking potential economic breakdown, and one of them might surprise you. Keep watching. Number 6, Maine. Maine, with its rocky coastlines and lobster boats, feels timeless, but economically, it's stuck in the past and aging fast. With just 1.4 million people, Maine has one of the oldest populations in America. The median age is 45, and younger residents are leaving. The median home price has climbed near $400,000, but household income sits around $63,000. Tourism brings in $7 billion annually, but bookings are already softening. Hotel reservations are down. The lobster industry is getting hammered by warming waters and falling wholesale prices. Unemployment has crept above 5%. GDP is barely growing. Healthcare costs are among the highest in the nation, with families spending over $18,000 annually. Infrastructure quality ranks 41st. Broadband access in rural areas is minimal at best. Population decline means fewer students, less revenue, and towns slowly dying. In some counties, deaths now outnumber births year after year. That's not just decline, that's demographic collapse. Picture small coastal towns where every year another storefront goes dark, another school shrinks a grade, and another young family heads for Boston or beyond. When recession hits, that slow bleed turns into a severed artery. Number 5. Kansas. Kansas, the wheat state, is quietly unraveling. The state's economy depends on agriculture, aircraft manufacturing, and energy, all under serious pressure. The median home price sits around $238,000, while household income is $68,000. But here's the kicker. Insurance premiums have exploded. Homeowners now pay $5,000 to $8,000 annually, especially in tornado-prone areas. Kansas's Rainy Day Fund covers less than 7% of annual spending. Agricultural revenue has fallen double digits due to droughts and falling wheat prices. Unemployment has been climbing. Wichita has seen layoffs spike as aircraft orders decline. Boeing and Spirit Aerosystems have announced workforce reductions totaling over 8,000 jobs. Consumer debt per household sits in the mid-$40,000. Credit card delinquencies have jumped 18% in the past year. Kansas ranks 39th in healthcare access and 38th in education funding. Over 1,100 bridges are structurally deficient. Rural hospitals continue closing. Between 2020 and 2026, Kansas has lost nearly 35,000 residents. The state's GDP has slipped into negative growth. For family farmers and factory workers, one more bad year could mean losing land that's been in the family for generations, or watching a career disappear overnight. Kansas was built on wheat and work ethic, but that's not enough anymore. Now we're entering the danger zone. The top 4 states aren't just facing recession, they could be staring down total economic breakdown if the wrong shocks hit at the wrong time. And the numbers coming up are absolutely shocking. Number 4. Arkansas. Arkansas sits quietly in the South, often overlooked, but it may soon be impossible to ignore. The state's economy leans heavily on agriculture, poultry processing, and retail, specifically one giant, Walmart. All three are vulnerable when costs rise and consumer spending slows. The median home price sits in the low $200,000, but household income averages only $56,000, leaving little room for rising costs. The state's reserves cover less than 6% of annual spending. Budgets are tight, even in good years. Agriculture is struggling under droughts, volatile commodity prices, and higher input costs. Poultry producers are seeing margins squeezed. Walmart, the state's largest private employer, has gone through waves of automation, restructuring, and selective closures that ripple through local economies. Unemployment has climbed above 6%, with nearly 30,000 jobs lost. Consumer debt is high, and delinquencies are trending upward. GDP has contracted. Arkansas ranks near the bottom in healthcare access, education funding, and infrastructure quality. Over 1,300 bridges are structurally deficient. The poverty rate approaches 17%. Seriously, in many communities, one Walmart downsizing doesn't just mean lost jobs, it means fewer places to shop, lower sales tax revenue, and another hit to already struggling town budgets. With low reserves, high poverty, weak infrastructure, and an economy built on fragile foundations, even a moderate downturn could hit Arkansas swiftly and brutally. Number 3. Alabama. Alabama is facing an economic future that looks anything but rich. The state's economy relies on manufacturing, especially autos, along with agriculture and defense spending. All three can come under pressure in a global slowdown. The median home price has climbed into the mid-$200,000, while household income is well below the national median. Insurance premiums have jumped sharply in recent years, with homeowners in many counties paying $7,000 to $9,000 annually just to stay covered. Alabama's reserves are thin, covering less than 5% of the budget. That places it near the bottom nationally for rainy day funds. Manufacturing has already shown signs of strain, and large auto plants have announced waves of layoffs in past downturns. Unemployment can rise quickly when that happens. The state has a poverty rate well above the national average, at nearly 18%. Healthcare access and education funding rank near the bottom among states. Over 1,400 bridges are structurally deficient. Rural hospitals are closing at an alarming rate. That means more parents driving an extra hour for emergency care, more kids in overcrowded classrooms, and more small towns slowly hollowing out. Alabama's economy was never built for resilience. In the next major recession, it could be pushed dangerously close to the edge. Number 2. Mississippi. Mississippi has spent decades at or near the bottom of almost every economic ranking, and the numbers show why it's so vulnerable. Over 20% of residents live below the poverty line. That's more than 1 in 5 people. The median household income is the lowest in the nation, at around $52,000. Mississippi's rainy day fund covers barely 4% of its budget, leaving almost no cushion when revenues fall. When the national economy slows, Mississippi's key sectors, agriculture, low-wage manufacturing, and already stressed healthcare, often contract hard. Factories close or move. Rural hospitals have been shutting down or cutting services. Unemployment spikes, while workforce participation sits at or near the lowest in America, under 57%. Household debt is heavy relative to incomes. The state ranks near the very bottom in healthcare access, education funding, and infrastructure quality. Over 1,500 bridges are structurally deficient. In Jackson and other communities, water systems have already gone through high-profile crises, forcing residents to rely on bottled water and boil notices. For many families, recession doesn't feel like a new event. It feels like the continuation of a struggle that never really ended. Mississippi isn't just vulnerable to a recession, parts of it already feel like they're in a permanent downturn. And now, the number 1 state most at risk of collapse in a deep recession. The situation here is so fragile that what you're about to hear could change how you see America's economic future. Number 1. Louisiana. Louisiana stands out as one of the most exposed states in the country. Its rainy day fund covers less than 4% of annual expenditures, one of the weakest cushions among all states. That's not a safety net. That's a warning sign. Economic growth has been uneven, and the state has endured some of the steepest contractions in past shocks. Energy prices have gone through brutal boom and bust cycles, and offshore oil drilling is nowhere near the levels seen in the industry's heyday. Revenues from oil and gas, once the backbone of the state's finances, have been volatile and in real terms much weaker than in past decades. When oil struggles, Louisiana struggles with it. Unemployment in Louisiana typically runs above the national average and jumps sharply after major storms or national downturns. New Orleans has repeatedly lost hospitality jobs when tourism drops. Construction in Baton Rouge and other cities has stalled during economic slowdowns, leaving half-finished projects and laid-off workers. Places like Lake Charles, hammered by hurricanes and industrial volatility, have watched residents leave by the thousands. Median household income is well below the U.S. average, at around $56,000, while housing, insurance, and basic costs take up a huge share of paychecks, especially in lower-income rural parishes. Nearly a quarter of residents live in poverty, putting Louisiana among the very poorest states in America. Over 40% of renters are severely cost-burdened, spending more than half their income just to keep a roof overhead. And get this, consumer debt per household runs around $44,000, and delinquencies spike quickly when times get tough. Flood and homeowners insurance premiums have risen dramatically in recent years along the Gulf Coast. Some property owners now face five-figure annual bills just for coverage. Many simply cannot afford it and are going uninsured, gambling that the next hurricane won't destroy everything they own. Louisiana ranks near the bottom in healthcare access and education funding. The state's infrastructure isn't just aging, it's failing in places. Over 1,700 bridges are structurally deficient. Water systems, roads, and levees need more money than the state has been able or willing to provide. Insurers and lenders are pulling back from the riskiest areas. Ports and tourism hubs feel the impact of global slowdowns and shifting trade routes. The three pillars that once held up Louisiana's economy, oil, tourism, and shipping, are all under pressure at the same time. This isn't just recession risk. In a severe downturn or after another major storm, parts of the state could face something close to systemic breakdown without massive outside aid. When the next major shock hits, it won't just threaten a single city. It will test whether entire regions are even livable for the average person without ongoing federal rescue. Louisiana isn't just approaching the edge. In many ways, it's already leaning over it. And if it falls, the impact will be felt across the entire nation. This is what collapse can look like, not in some distant future, but potentially within this decade, inside the United States of America. These 10 states are the canaries in the coal mine, and the mine is under serious stress. Now it's your turn. Do you live in one of these 10 states? Are you seeing these warning signs in your own community? Higher premiums, closed hospitals, crumbling roads, disappearing jobs? Drop a comment and say which state you're in and what you're seeing on the ground. And if there's a state you think should be on this list that wasn't, tell everyone which one and why. If this opened your eyes to what's really happening in America's economy, hit like, share this with someone who still thinks their state is safe, and subscribe. Because in an upcoming video, we're going to break down the states most likely to survive and even benefit from a major recession. You're going to want to know if you live in one of them, or if you should. We are EconoNova. Welcome to the apocalypse.